What is up, Showminators? Welcome back to my channel. Today, I thought I was gonna just teach you something useful. And as I am a computer scientist, I thought I would teach you a programming language. So the one that I've picked today is called VBA, or Visual Basic Applications. What is it? Well, it's a programming language built for automatic tasks in Access or Excel. And no, you do not need an IDE to use this. All you need to do is launch any of those applications and press Alt 11, Alt F11 to go into the VBA editor. So why learn VBA, right? You know how you copy paste again and again? Well, VBA just does that for you 1,000 times and does not complain. So yeah, VBA is basically giving your database instructions so it stops acting like a confused intern. Let's get started. What I'm gonna do is I have already created a couple of examples and I'm just gonna walk you through it and then solve an actual problem. So let's look at the examples that I have created. Okay, this is what you call a basic function in VBA, right? The way you create functions in VBA is you mention whether or not it's public or private, mention if it's a subroutine or a function, and then you just give it a name. I called it demo function one, or if I wanted to follow the trend or the codings pattern there, I'll just call it F1. Okay, now let's go inside F1. Anything inside public function one and end function is the scope of that function, or let's just say that's the area that function is going to cover, and anything inside it is what it's going to execute. Dim x as an integer. That is how you initialize variables in VBA. There's a couple of types of variables. The most common are integer strings, and some of the others are Boolean, double, objects, etc. All right. Then here I am assigning the value 55 to my variable x, which is an integer, right? I cannot just try to assign a string to x because I've already explicitly mentioned that it's going to be an integer or a number. All right. This is how you assign a string to one of your variables. Now, one thing to note is that most programming languages, if you're working with strings or text, you might want to wrap it in double quotes. Otherwise, you're going to get an error. Now, I'm going to add something called a debug point here. A debug point helps you stop the function at certain points and then check the state. Now that I've set that debug point, I am going to call the function. The way to call the function is right call function name in the immediate window and press enter. All right. Now I can hover over my variables to see what values they have, or I can even write question mark, variable name, enter to print the values in the immediate window. Let's do that for y as well, the show me nators. Perfect. Now, that is one way to go about it. The other method is debug print, which we will see in example 3. Okay, now I'm just going to press this green play button to end that function and keep it moving. The next thing I want to show you guys is if and else statements. These are like building blocks of programming languages, right? So once again, I'm going to initialize a variable. It's still a number. It's an integer. I'm going to initialize or assign 4 to it. Then I'm going to check whether or not it is divisible by 2. And the way to do it is using the mod operator. Mod is basically checking what is the remainder. All right. So I'm writing if x mod 2 equals to 0, then message box x is even. If this criteria does not pass, it'll immediately go here and say x is odd. So let's use debug points, go in there and call that function. Call F2. All right. Now it passed this criteria here because clearly 4 is divisible by 2. So it will give you message box, x is even. Okay, great. Now, if I wanted to take it the other way, I can just turn this into an odd number, which is 5. Call this again. Now it did not pass this criteria and we get x is odd. So that is a basic version of how if statements work. All right, let's move on to the next one. F3, Here we are working with something called a loop. Loop is just a way to do a specific task a certain number of times or until a criteria is met, right? So once again, I'll initialize an integer. Yes, I will work with integers a lot throughout this example and video. So for I equals to 1 to 5, debug print show me naders rock, because you guys do rock. All right, let's call that function. I'm not going to use a debug point for this one. I'm simply going to press enter. Now, it print 5 times because I said for I equals to 1 to 5. If I did 6, it's going to print 6 times. So basically, that's the range I'm providing. And between that range, which is an inclusive range, it'll run as many times as possible. All right, let's go into F4, which is the last one for this demo, before I start solving a problem for you. F4 is just like F3, but we use a different version of a loop. This loop is called a while loop. Okay, so the for loop says for I equals to 1 to 6, keep running. So that's a criteria, right? While loops also have a criteria. In while loop, what I did is before I even went in there, I initialized a variable called x. I set it to 1. Then I said do while x, which is currently 1, is less than 5. If it's less than 5, go inside this scope and then print show me naders rock. Then I said x equals to x plus 1, or I'm just incrementing the value within x, and I'm just going to keep looping. Okay. Well, after this function is over, I'm going to ask you guys to comment what's going to happen if I remove this statement. All right. You guys can comment that below. Okay. So let's call function 4, F4. All right. Show me naders rock. Now I'm going to put a debug point right there. I'm saying x equals to x plus 1. So x's current value is 1. If I add 1 to it, it's going to become 2. Duh. Now here, x's value, if I hover over x, should now be equals to 2. And there you see it. It's going to keep printing, keep incrementing, keep printing, keep incrementing, keep printing. It's going to keep doing that. All right. It print exactly 4 times. Now, what happens if I turn this into a less than equal to? Let's run this again, this time without the debug points, because I'm sure you guys have already understood what I'm trying to do here because you guys are really smart. It will print that 5 times. So that was just a basic of how to use VBA and how to deal with loops, if statements, and variables. Now I'm going to solve a lead code problem for you. It's an easy lead code problem, but we'll look at it together. All right, it is time to solve a lead code problem. It's going to be an easy one, okay? So the problem we are solving is called sum until 0. Basically, I'm going to ask the user, hey, give me a number. And I'm going to add it to my sum. And I'm going to keep doing that until the user enters 0, okay? So this is a simple problem. So all I need is probably just 2 variables. One is going to be input num as integer and sum as integer to keep track. Okay, so as I need to keep going until input num is 0, I need to like set it to something. I need to set it to something not equals to 0, and I'm gonna choose 69. Yeah, I know you guys got it. Do while input num not equals to 0. Okay, that's how you do a not equal to in VBA. Okay, loop. I just closed my loop. I like to do that. That's for like bookkeeping almost, because sometimes when your code gets long and simple things like not closing your loop can give you errors and it just pisses you off so much. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to say input num equals to input box. Please enter a number or enter 0 to stop. I'm going to put a smiley face in there. Okay, sum equals to sum plus input num. Okay, so immediately if 0 is entered, what's going to happen is input num is going to be turned into 0. It's gonna hit this line. Well, sum plus zero doesn't even matter. It's still gonna remain sum. And it's gonna come back to the top, check if the criteria is met. It is not, and it's gonna end. So I'm pretty sure that solves the issue. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna print. I'm gonna say debug dot print your sum is equal to space. What I'm doing here is called a concatenation. You got to use an ampersand and the variable you want to add to your string. You can even concatenate um, a string to a string using that ampersand sign. Okay, that should do it. Now I'm gonna keep a couple of debug points here and then call this function. So let's go ahead and call it. Call whatever my function name is. Okay, currently it's 69. Now I'm gonna ask my user, hey, please enter something. Well, I'm gonna enter a 2. Great. What is my sum currently equals to? It equals to 2. All right, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna say enter something, 6. You guys should keep track of what the actual sum should be. I'm gonna press play. 11. I'm gonna press play again. And finally, 0. Let's see how it's gonna react. Sum plus 0, which is like, it really doesn't matter. So the loop ended because now input num is equals to 0 and it prints my total. All right, guys, that was just a simple demo on how to use VBA. And these are like the building blocks, and everything and anything you will build, such as reports, automation, will use all of the skills that I have demonstrated today. If you have any questions, please mention it in the comment section. Thank you, and please subscribe to my channel.